The commercial flight from the glamorous shores of Monaco back to the sprawling, smog-choked metropolis of Los Angeles was nothing more than a suffocating blur of high altitude and premium alcohol for Steffy Forster Finnegan. Sitting in the dimly lit first-class cabin, Steffy stared blankly at the bottom of her fourth glass of bourbon. The ice clinked against the crystal, a hollow, lonely sound that perfectly mirrored the echoing emptiness expanding within her chest. Every time she closed her heavy, tear-swollen eyes, the radiant Mediterranean sun of the French Riviera mocked her, quickly replaced by the horrifying, paralyzing image of Sheila Carter standing on the beach. But it was not merely Sheila's terrifying presence that had completely shattered Steffy's world. It was the agonizing, soul-crushing realization that her husband, John Finn Finnegan, had known. He had shared a flight with the woman who had once left them both bleeding out in a filthy alleyway. He had made a secret, despicable pact with a monster. And when the truth finally erupted on the Monaco sand, Finn had dared to offer a sliver of defense for his biological mother. In that singular, devastating moment, the unshakable foundation of the Shin marriage crumbled into dust. Steffy had ripped her wedding ring from her finger, hurling it at Finn's chest before fleeing across the globe. Now, descending into the dark night of Los Angeles, she was a woman without a home, without a safe harbor, and completely consumed by a profound, suffocating betrayal. The heavy tires of the aircraft screeched against the wet tarmac, jolting Steffy from her dark, agonizing reverie. As she navigated the bustling airport, the vibrant, chaotic energy of Los Angeles felt entirely alien to her fractured state of mind. She hailed a cab, the heavy rain beginning to streak against the window panes, perfectly mirroring the silent, bitter tears that finally began to fall down her cheeks in a steady stream. The driver asked for her destination, and for a long, agonizing moment, Steffy hesitated. The Cliff House, the beautiful, sun-drenched home she had painstakingly built with Finn, the sanctuary where they had raised Hayes and Kelly, was now fundamentally tainted. It was a monument to a lie. She could not go back there, not tonight, not when the phantom scent of Sheila Carter's manipulation seemed to linger on every memory of her husband. She desperately needed an escape. She needed someone who understood the agonizing sting of betrayal, someone who knew her soul intimately enough to piece it back together without asking impossible, painful questions. The address she finally gave the driver was not her own. It was a secluded, rustic location nestled deep within the wooded hills, the old cabin. Across town, the old cabin stood as a lonely beacon in the stormy, unforgiving night. Inside, Liam Spencer sat in the flickering, uneven glow of candlelight, nursing a heavy glass of dark, bitter whiskey. The rustic wooden walls, once a beautiful symbol of romantic isolation and marital bliss, now felt like a claustrophobic prison of his own making. Liam was a man completely adrift in a violent sea of corporate and personal chaos. His wife, Hope Logan Spencer, had orchestrated a massive, secretive defection to Logan Creations, launching a rival fashion line that had completely blindsided Forster Creations and ignited a volcanic corporate war. But it was not just the business betrayal that haunted Liam. It was the suffocating, intricate web of lies Hope had spun to protect her secret contract. The fallout had been absolutely apocalyptic. Brooke Logan Forster, consumed by a terrifying, unrelenting maternal rage over the deception, had officially disowned Hope and ruthlessly evicted them both from the cabin on the Logan estate. While Liam had offered the sprawling Spencer mansion as a temporary refuge, the emotional chasm between him and Hope had grown into an unbridgeable, terrifying abyss. He had retreated to this old, forgotten cabin to find a fleeting moment of silence, to process the devastating reality that the woman he loved had transformed into someone he barely recognized. The rhythmic, melancholic drumming of the rain against the cabin's tin roof was suddenly interrupted by a hesitant, desperate knock at the heavy wooden door. Liam frowned, his brow furrowing in deep confusion. Who could possibly be seeking him out in the middle of a torrential downpour at this ungodly hour? He set his glass down on the scarred coffee table, the amber liquid sloshing over the crystal rim, and slowly made his way to the entryway. When he pulled the heavy door open, the breath instantly caught in his throat. Standing on the porch, drenched to the bone, shivering violently, and reeking of premium airline bourbon, was Steffy. Her usually immaculate hair was plastered to her face in dark, wet ribbons. Her makeup was smeared beneath hollow, bloodshot eyes, and her posture was completely broken. She looked absolutely nothing like the fierce, indomitable co-CEO of Forrester Creations. She looked like a woman who had just survived a catastrophic shipwreck, only to realize she was still drowning in the icy depths. "Steffy," Liam breathed, his voice laced with a potent mixture of profound shock and immediate, instinctual concern. He did not wait for a rational explanation. He reached out, his strong hands gripping her trembling shoulders, and pulled her out of the unforgiving storm and into the relative warmth of the cabin. Steffy collapsed against his chest the very moment the door clicked shut behind them. The emotional dam finally broke, and she began to sob, deep, agonizing, soul-tearing sobs that shook her entire frame. Liam held her tight, his arms wrapping around her in a familiar, fiercely protective embrace. For years, through countless trials and tribulations, Liam had been Steffy's ultimate safe harbor, the man she invariably turned to when the weight of the world became too heavy to bear. Despite the complicated, often painful history of the STEAM relationship, the foundational bond of deep care and mutual understanding had never truly been severed. Tonight, that profound bond was the only thing keeping Steffy tethered to reality. Liam gently guided her to the plush, worn sofa situated directly in front of the stone fireplace. He grabbed a thick woolen blanket, draping it carefully over her shivering shoulders, before moving to the small kitchenette to pour her a glass of the same bitter whiskey he had been drinking. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed, a fleeting, seemingly innocent contact that sent a sudden jolt of electricity through the dimly lit room. Steffy took the glass with trembling hands, downing a generous gulp without hesitation. The alcohol burned a fiery, necessary path down her throat, providing a momentary, numbing distraction from the agonizing ache in her chest. She stared blankly into the flickering flames, the golden candlelight dancing across her tear-stained cheeks. "He lied to me, Liam," she whispered, her voice hoarse, fragile, and completely shattered. "Finn lied to me about the one thing I begged him to be honest about. He brought her back into our lives." Slowly, painfully, Steffy began to pour her heart out, the words tumbling from her lips in a desperate, cathartic rush. She recounted the entire devastating nightmare of Monaco. She described the initial, fragile hope of the romantic getaway, the desperate need to escape the corporate warfare back in Los Angeles, and the terrifying, heart-stopping moment she spotted Sheila Carter lurking on the Mediterranean beach. But the true horror, she explained with a trembling voice, was not Sheila's physical presence. It was Finn's cowardly confession. She told Liam about the secret, sickening pact Finn had made on the commercial flight, his conscious decision to hide the monster who had shot them from his own wife, and the ultimate, unforgivable betrayal of defending Sheila during the explosive confrontation. "I threw my ring at him," Steffy confessed, a fresh wave of bitter tears spilling over her dark lashes. "I left it there, buried in the sand. How can I ever look at him again, Liam? How can I ever trust the man who shares my bed, the man who is supposed to protect our children, when he is so easily, pathetically manipulated by the woman who tried to murder us?" Liam listened in stunned, furious silence, his heart breaking for the devastated woman sitting beside him. He understood the profound, paralyzing terror that Sheila Carter inflicted upon Steffy's psyche better than anyone. He knew about the severe PTSD, the haunting nightmares, the lingering, invisible trauma of the alleyway shooting that had nearly claimed both their lives. For Finn to compromise Steffy's safety and sanity, even for a fleeting moment, was a betrayal of the highest, most despicable order. Liam reached out, gently taking Steffy's free hand in his own, his thumb tracing soothing, rhythmic circles against her cold knuckles. "I am so incredibly sorry, Steffy," he murmured, his voice thick with genuine, overwhelming emotion. "You did not deserve that. You have fought so hard, bled so much, to build a safe, beautiful life for your family and Finn. He should have protected that at all costs. He should have protected you. He failed you in the worst possible way. The shared grief in the small room was palpable, a heavy, suffocating blanket that wrapped tightly around them both. Encouraged by Liam's unwavering, fierce support, Steffy turned her gaze to him, noticing for the first time the deep, exhausted shadows beneath his own eyes, the physical manifestation of his own private hell. "And what about you?" she asked softly, her voice laced with genuine concern despite her own agony. "Why are you hiding out in this old cabin? I thought Brooke kicked you and Hope out of the estate. Where is she?" The mere mention of his wife's name caused Liam's jaw to clench, a flash of profound, unadulterated pain crossing his handsome features. He took a long, slow sip of his whiskey before speaking, his voice heavy with defeat. Hope is gone, Steffy. Not just to Logan Creations, but she's gone in a way I don't know how to fix. She's transformed into someone else." Liam began to detail the agonizing, slow-motion deterioration of his own marriage. He spoke of Hope's massive, calculated defection, the intricate lies she had told to protect her secret contract with Katie, and the devastating, nuclear fallout with Brooke. "She lied to my face, Steffy, over and over again, without a single ounce of remorse until she was caught. She prioritized a fashion line, her own ego, and a bitter corporate war over the truth, over our family's stability. And when Brooke disowned her, when her own mother kicked us out of the cabin like strangers, Hope just doubled down. She basked in the media attention while our family burned to the ground. I offered her the Spencer mansion. I tried to be her rock, but I don't even know who she is anymore. She chose the spotlight over our marriage." In the flickering, uneven candlelight, surrounded by the bitter scent of alcohol and the rhythmic, relentless pounding of the rain, a profound, highly dangerous realization began to settle firmly between them. They were two tragic sides of the exact same coin. Both Steffy and Liam had been fundamentally, cruelly betrayed by the people they had sworn to spend their lives with. Finn had prioritized a delusional, toxic connection to his psychopathic biological mother over his wife's safety and sanity. Hope had prioritized her blinding ambition, her pride, and a bitter corporate war over her husband's trust and her family's unity. In this isolated cabin, completely stripped of their corporate titles, their immense wealth, and their carefully curated public personas, they were simply a man and a woman drowning in the agonizing, suffocating wake of spousal betrayal. The shared trauma created an intense, undeniable magnetic pull, drawing them closer together in the physical and emotional space of the small room. The atmosphere in the cabin began to shift, the heavy, suffocating grief slowly, almost imperceptibly, transforming into something entirely different, something far more dangerous and forbidden. The premium alcohol was buzzing warmly in their veins, lowering their inhibitions, blurring the rigid, societal lines of loyalty and marital boundaries. Steffy looked at Liam, truly looked at him for the first time in months. She saw the familiar, comforting lines of his face, the deep, soulful eyes that had always looked at her with such unwavering adoration, respect, and unconditional love. Liam had never asked her to compromise her safety. Liam had never brought a monster into her home. Liam had always, unequivocally, been her fierce protector. A deep, aching yearning began to blossom in her chest, a desperate, undeniable need to feel cherished, to feel safe, to feel anything other than the agonizing, sharp sting of Finn's betrayal. Liam, too, found himself entirely, helplessly captivated by the broken woman sitting beside him. Even completely shattered, her hair damp and her makeup ruined by tears and rain, Steffy possessed an undeniable, intoxicating magnetic pull that he had never been able to fully resist. She was fierce, she was passionate, and she loved with a terrifying, all-consuming intensity that demanded equal devotion. Seeing her so incredibly vulnerable, so completely broken by another man's foolishness, ignited a primal, fiercely protective instinct deep within his soul. He desperately wanted to erase the pain from her beautiful eyes. He wanted to prove to her, with every fiber of his being, that she was worthy of absolute, uncompromising loyalty. He leaned in closer, the physical distance between them shrinking to mere inches. He could feel the warmth radiating from her skin, could smell the intoxicating, familiar blend of rain, expensive perfume, and bourbon. "You have always been my safe harbor, Liam," Steffy whispered, her voice trembling with raw emotion, her gaze dropping to his lips before fluttering back up to meet his intense eyes. The absolute vulnerability in her statement was the final, fatal spark needed to ignite the powder keg of their shared, complicated history. The air between them crackled with an undeniable, electric tension that made it hard to breathe. Liam did not speak. He couldn't. The overwhelming surge of emotion, the desperate, mutual need to comfort and be comforted, completely hijacked his rational thought. He reached out, his hand gently, reverently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away a stray tear that had escaped her lashes. Steffy leaned heavily into his touch, her eyes fluttering shut, a soft, breathless sigh escaping her parted lips. And then, the inevitable, catastrophic moment happened. Liam leaned forward, closing the remaining distance between them, and pressed his lips against hers. The kiss started out tentative, a gentle, questioning exploration of boundaries that had long been sealed away. But the very moment their lips met, a massive emotional dam broke within them both. The gentle touch rapidly escalated into a desperate, passionate, all-consuming collision of bodies and souls. Steffy's hands flew up, tangling fiercely in Liam's hair, pulling him closer, anchoring herself to him, as if he were the only solid, real object in a world that was violently spinning out of control. Liam wrapped his arms tightly around her waist, pulling her flush against his chest, pouring all of his deep frustration, his profound grief, and his lingering, unresolved love into the kiss. In the flickering, chaotic shadows of the old cabin, the wrongful, dramatic reunion of the iconic Steam couple was sealed with a kiss that tasted of bitter whiskey and salty tears. It was a moment of profound, undeniable transgression. They were both legally married to other people. They both had families, children, and massive, complicated lives waiting for them outside the wooden walls of this isolated sanctuary. Yet, in this stolen, intoxicating moment, absolutely none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was the desperate, burning need to find solace in a familiar, loving embrace, to seek immediate compensation for the agonizing heartbreak inflicted by their current partners. They were lost in a whirlwind of passion, grief, and undeniable chemistry. As they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, their foreheads resting heavily against one another, the heavy, unanswerable question hung in the highly charged atmosphere between them. Was this a genuine, undeniable resurgence of true love? Was the magnetic pull of Steam simply too powerful to be ignored, a grand destiny that had merely been delayed by the complications of Finn and Hope? Or was this something far more tragic and fleeting? Was this passionate collision merely a desperate trauma bond, a mutual, subconscious attempt to use each other as emotional band-aids to cover the gaping, bleeding wounds inflicted by their spouses? Were they simply two broken people seeking temporary compensation for their shattered hearts, using physical intimacy to numb the psychological pain? Regardless of the true psychological motivation behind the kiss, the implications were absolutely catastrophic. This single, passionate transgression possessed the explosive power to completely obliterate any remaining, fragile efforts to heal their respective marriages. If Finn were to discover that Steffy had fled Monaco only to fall straight into the arms of her ex-husband, the Shin marriage would be permanently, irreparably destroyed, leaving no room for forgiveness or explanation. If Hope, already spiraling from her mother's brutal disownment and the immense stress of her corporate defection, learned that Liam had found solace in Steffy's embrace, the Lope relationship would instantly disintegrate into ash.